Hello and welcome to Cruising and Musing. We are celebrating having Studio A back on. Power steering is fixed. AC is blowing beautifully. Very nice break from Studio B, which is now in the shop for its AC. Our mechanic did a wonderful job. It's driving just like it did brand new before the repair. And, he managed to do it for about $450. That's 4 hours of labor, about $50 worth of parts, and I am more than happy to pay him that in labor, because the other solution we had was, $900 worth of parts just to start with, and probably twice the amount of time and labor by the time everything got torn out of the car and put back together. So that being said, kudos to him, and this is why you keep a good mechanic on tap. One of the secrets of life: keep a good mechanic on hold, have a good doctor, good accountant, and a couple good friends. Good things to have. So today's topic, if you'll go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't already, our goal is to hit 50 so I can do live streams when I'm cruising out to car shows. Today's topic is politics as pop religion and why I feel like this is a good thing. Now, I'm going to come out the bat and address all of your major concerns right off the get-go. Yes, I know politics moving into the same stream has made politics something that's occasionally inescapable. You just can't get something away from it. It has made some people turn violent. It has helped push some into the extremes. And it has, definitely not been handled the best that it could have been by our population. That being said, looking at the big picture here, I think part of the reason that people reacted so violently to the different political situations was because that it was so taboo to talk about them before that we simply didn't, and that resulted in the whole his team, my team, your team, my team, left and right, red and blue. And you dehumanize the other side because you don't know the other side, when really, that really nice old man next door is on the other team, whichever side it is they happen to be for, and you're working your way, through demonizing someone to find out that, somebody that who doesn't fit that demonization is nearby. It's the whole idea of that exposure, cures xenophobia. Well, I also feel that exposure cures ideaphobia, as I'm lacking a better term right now. That exposure stops the extremist ideas from taking hold and breeds tolerance in varied ideas, which would allow us to do things such as, explore the ideas the other side holds, examine our own ideas and why we hold them, find where, people are willing to give ground on either side, and get a more unified group decision going on that everyone can live with happily, and cut down the overall level of vitriol and violence and hatred, and us all live together. And I know right now I sound like I'm hitting my peace pipe and I'm talking like a hippie of some utopia that couldn't exist, but I really do, that if we can ride this wave of politics being in the mainstream, we can take a lot of these negatives through patience and depth, getting people to think deeper about things and listen closer when people they disagree with talk, with an open mind and a desire to understand. We can kind of ride this wave of energy that is currently so negative, have it become a positive, and ride it into kind of that utopia of everything being far better considered, far more thoughtfully considered, and used to create a better situation for all of us as a whole. Now, exactly what does that look like to me? Well, that means that you're going to have to learn each other's positions. If you're pro-life, you're going to have to give an open ear, open-hearted listen to, what the pro-choicer has to say. If you're pro-choice, you're going to have to listen and take seriously the points that the pro-lifer is going to make. And, if you're somebody who just can't take religion seriously, then you better be listening to a pro-lifer who is not religious and is making that argument from a place that isn't religious, so that you do take it seriously. And it's only then, when we're listening to the best argument that the other side can present, the steel man of their argument instead of the straw man, that we can come to understand what they think, why they think, and how we can move forward and get past that situation and start to, have more peaceful discussions with each other that have a greater chance of actually bringing us to a solution rather than making the problem worse than it already is. Now, where would we start with this? Well, let's say that we're starting to, move towards a greater understanding. We could start by being more engaged with our local politics. They matter more in your life day to day than most things, and a lot of your local political positions are nonpartisan by design. For example, school boards, nonpartisan. Mayoral life, nonpartisan, at least here. Not every city's going to be the same, but what a nonpartisan race does is it forces people to actually talk about their ideas of what they think is a problem and what they can identify as a solution and, work out from there. So now you get to vote for solutions and ideas instead of people, and that's what I'm hoping for we can kind of move to, where we don't care if someone is black or white, gay or straight, man or woman. We're going to judge them instead based on the ideas they bring to the table, and Democrat or Republican will cease to have the meaning that it currently does because we're going to listen to the individual candidates' ideas. So even if we have somebody who generally agrees with us but lacks any good ideas, we may vote for somebody that we disagree with in hopes that their good ideas can make up for the ones that we disagree with and help solve things. Because a solution you don't like that works is better than a solution that just doesn't work that you do like at the end of the day. It's simply, how to put this. I don't like the idea of reparations. But if we can take the idea of reparations and solve 90% of the problems in our inner cities, I'm going to call that worth. It's not fair to me, it's not right, but if it actually fixes problems and makes my life better as somebody who likes to live in the inner city, that's worth it to me. Moving away from that topic before, pitchforks and torches come out, the other aspect of this is that, we want to also stop judging people based solely on one or two ideas. When somebody has one idea and it's a bad idea, it's not the end of the world. We can't castigate them as a human and, judge their entire value on that one singular bad idea. It's not right. Now, I'm not talking about something like death to all Jews being something you'll judge someone on. But, let's say one person's pro-life, the other person's pro-choice, and you don't agree with it. That's not the hill you need to die on for, the value of that human being in your regards. For all you know, that person is completely in agreement with everything else that you care about, and you only disagree on one thing. Or maybe they have a very, very closely held reason that's very emotional to them and very deep to them about why they think that. And it might convince you to change your mind as well. So it pays to listen to those ideas that you disagree with and not judge people solely upon, a very limited amount of knowledge about them. Keeping an open mind is very important. Granted, you do draw the lines. If somebody confesses to be a pedophile, we bust out the stake and we light them up like a witch hunt. It's the best option we have until they figure out a way to cure that shit. Some things simply are what they are, but most things in life, most things that we fight about and we argue about are things that we can reach a compromise on. Where am I going forward with this? So here's some lists of things that I think if we could stop fighting with each other and come together and unify and think deeper about, these are things that we could push for, and since we would be pushing on both sides, actually get these things from the government and begin to enjoy better. If we can stop embracing the negativities of politics as pop culture and start embracing the positives, and the possible positives of being an informed electorate that is pressuring our elected officials, staying involved, and watchdogging those dirty bastards. Because, Congress has the lowest approval rating of everyone, but they also get reelected the most. Wouldn't it be nice if they were held to account for the things they did? I'm looking at you, Patriot Act. Moving on. So some of the things that we could push through if we really wanted to, that I have found huge partisan support on both sides for, having an actually secure election and, setting it up in such a way that, yeah, we do recognize that as secure, so on the right, what that means is, yeah, voter ID and everything else. On the left, what that means is ensuring that everybody has access to some form of government ID so they can vote. And on election day, here's an example. Let's make election day a holiday. Let's make election day a holiday, and let's waiver and comp all bus fares going to the, for that day. Just do free buses on election day, in big cities. That makes it very easy for folks to get out towards the polls. Let's say that any cab fare going to a polling place, can be comped by the government or covered with, say, an EBT swipe. Like your election day ride is something the government will pay for, to subsidize your ability to vote. I wouldn't mind my tax dollars, as somebody who spends a lot of money on ways to get around, subsidizing some little old lady living in the inner city who needs help getting down to the polls so she can vote. I think we should be past centralized polling positions and be able to offer some kind of secured, remote voting, the way we used to have secured mail-in ballots, and used to, or have some sort of idea of at least as secure as, like American Idol voting, where you can only vote once, or you vote with your, you punch in your social security number, like online banking secure level. You sign in to the, election.gov site for, the U.S., and you put in your social security number and you vote the whole way down your ballot, the same way they print your ballot and hand it to you in a lot of voting locations now. That kind of security in our elections would at least be a step in the right direction, and that kind of accessibility in our elections would be a step in the right direction, and that's something that would make both parties happy, even if they both had to give up a little something for it. The people on the right aren't going to be happy about the government picking up the bill for people on that, but the people on the left aren't going to be happy about the extra requirement for IDs and everything. But when you put that together, both of them are gaining something that's worth giving up the other. It's a win-win despite it being a lose-lose. And that's the art of compromise. So we can begin to work forward on those ideas. We can begin to work forward on that premise of, let's come together and forge through that kind of utopian idea to make it a functional reality of, this is how we're going to do it. This is, what we want to see. This is what we want to do. And it's going to be more important to us than the smaller squabbles that we're having. But again, this has to be, preceded by our own behavior changes. We have to not close off our minds to each other. We have to be willing to listen to ideas that we don't like, try to understand ideas that we don't like. We have to be willing to entertain things that don't benefit us in any kind of way as being necessary for some and worth our support of in others. Those are all things that, it's the give and take of it. Other things that we, kind of want and need in order for this to happen is we need to increase the transparency of how we can access things. And really, again, start protesting the ideas people have and not who they are. So, Trump's an asshole, but we need to look at his ideas and not let it be tainted by who he is. Yeah, we'd rather have someone else, so let's look at what ideas made Trump popular, find somebody who's better spoken, who is a better person, and, bring those ideas forward. Let's take a look at Biden, look what his good ideas are, and find somebody who, is better spoken and bring those ideas forward. We can have someone like Andrew Yang, who is well spoken and full of good ideas and possibilities, that, we may or may not agree with, but he's at least thinking about solutions to real problems and move forward with it. That would be a good thing to have. And what else do we want? We want a greater transparency, from government and with government. Everything is online now. We need to make sure that government is doing their bills and everything in bills that are a size where they're actually reading it. Who's reading those 12,000 page bills? That's bigger than a Wheel of Time book. They don't need to be passing a bill that looks like War and Peace. They need to be passing like a line item bill that has no more than 10 things in it that are all interrelated. And when they pass one law, they need to make sure that it's removing all previous forms of that law so it doesn't interact with each other in weird ways. And that sort of thing. Have that sort of transparency, have that sort of universal access to laws. So, they shouldn't be able to pass a law or take a vote on a law until it has been, say, listed on the congressional site where everybody could read it for, say, a week before they take a vote on it, which gives you enough time to reach out to your senator or your congressman, or for them to, start doing straw polls and whatnot with their voter base to let them, what they think. Because at the end of the day, it's your congressman's job to serve you. That's the whole idea of having a two-party Congress. The senators were meant to be selected by the state governments because the senators were never supposed to represent you or I's interests. They were supposed to represent the interests of the governments, of the state governments on the federal level, whereas the House of Representatives was supposed to represent you and I as individuals on the federal level. And that's why anything that deals with taxes and money, aka things that affect you and me directly, is supposed to go directly through the House of Representatives and originate there, whereas things such as treaties that are more about government-to-government interaction are supposed to originate in the Senate, not the House. These are, the Founding Fathers were very well thought-out men, and they made the rules the way they did for a reason, and maybe we need to start taking a look at having not dicked around with them in the name of spreading things around so that people can take advantage of diluting the power of any given station. If you take a look at, senators being elected by popular vote instead of by the state senate, you already got your popular vote in the election of your state senators. So now when you're doing your popular vote with the election of the federal senators, what you're doing is you're making their electorate more dispersed amongst many, many people. And while those many people are, now further represented, it comes at the cost of, because, you only get 2 per state, the vote for the guy in Montana means a lot more than the vote for the guy in Minnesota. So you have smaller interests having way more control over individual senators in the, low population states, compared to the large population states, where the only ones who are going to actually get through to a federal senator most of the time are people who own large business interests and are large donors. And even collectives of little men, little people like you and I, will never be able to fully influence a senator on the federal level because we don't represent the money. We don't have the power. Whereas if we could shift that back up, now we could at least control the, it's a step removed from, having that direct electorate, but we have a lot more control over our local senators on the state level than we do on the federal level. And if the federal level senators have to answer to our state governments, well, we've got tighter strings on them than we do on our federal representatives, if that makes sense to you. So that could be a step in the right direction, repealing that amendment and, shifting things around again. There are all kinds of ways that we could move forward, where we could find compromise if we could come together, and it's all possible if politics stay in the mainstream, people become well educated on those items and those politics, and are willing to open with work their open mind. Any human, can engage in thoughtful dialogue with one another about these ideas. They just have to be willing to. And that's the end of this. Be willing to listen to one another. Think deeply, examine your thoughts, eliminate cognitive dissonance. All goes back to that very first video at the start. And remember the golden, silver, and bronze rules. Treat others as you want to be treated. Your freedoms stop where they begin to limit the freedoms of others. And the government exists to protect individuals from groups and smaller groups from larger groups. Until next time, this has been Rob with Cruising and Musing.